So you want to be looking at page 273 at the same time. We're going to be talking about bones. We're going to start with bone structure. Okay, so together the bones form the skeletal system. All right, so you will notice a picture here of a skeleton with 11 things labeled. This is actually a picture of something from your study guide for the test, and you're going to be using this to study these particular bones, which I will enlarge it here. So you will have to know the skull, which is the cranium, right here. The scapula, which is a small bone. It's not a small bone. It's like a bone right here on your shoulder. The humerus, which is the larger bone in your upper arm. The two arm bones here, radius and ulna, I did on both sides so that you could see that the radius is the larger bone and the ulna is the smaller bone, which is on the inside. Yes?
My mom was a doctor, so she helped me with this last.
All right, so then you have your bone right here at your kneecap, which is also called the patella. So you'll need to know the patella. Then you have bones in your legs, boys, that you will need to know. The fibula and the tibia. Being the smaller one is the fibula and the larger is the tibia. Then your femur, which is the large upper bone in your leg. The sternum, which is right, sort of like right in the center of your rib cage. And the clavicle, which is the small bone that goes across your shoulder. Okay? So these are bones of and there are many, I think 209 bones or something, but these are some of the bones that you will learn about, but you will only have to know these 11 bones for your test on Friday, okay? All right, now, bone structure. So our bones, the skeletal bone structure, are covered with a long white tissue. You can see periosteum, ostium. I think T is silent. Anyway, so as you grow, the periosteum forms new bone tissue, and that also connects to your ligaments and your tendons. The end and the center of many bones are called spongy bones. Those are typically a softer bone. No, it's a very hard bone, but it's rigid. It's not soft, it's rigid. That's what makes the spongy. But it's not as strong as like a compact bone, but it is still a strong bone. But it's got some open, empty spaces in it that makes it look like a sponge. Okay? And then you have your compact bone, which is the mature bones are made of this. And the circular layers of bones called the osteons, which we watched on the video, are created there by cells, living cells in fact, between the layers. Now bones have many bones, not all bones, because there's a lot of bones, have a hollow region at the very center that's called a marrow cavity, which is what we're going to talk about next, which is the bone marrow. And this is in the spongy region. The marrow cavity and the spaces in the spongy bones are called the bone marrow. There is red bone marrow and there is yellow bone marrow. Okay? Red bone marrow is, in fact, in children, all children have red bone marrow. But as they grow, most bone marrow has become mature, and it becomes a yellow bone marrow, which is typically made of fat. The yellow is more mature and made of fat. Now, young people have areas called growth plates, and that's which are made of cartilages. cartilage forms your outer, like this outer part of your ears. If you touch your ear, and it's a little more flexible, but it's still pretty stiff. That's cartilage. As well as on the tip of your nose. My nose is cold, but on the tip of your nose, you also have cartilage. Back to your growth plates are made of cartilage cells. And once you have stopped growing, then your entire growth plate just becomes a bone. And so you no longer have growth plates once you have finished your growing. Thank you.
Jayla, stay. You can learn about bone.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Jayla, you can learn about bone
I can
marrow.
guarantee she knows nothing about this.
But you're a little friend. Come on. Come on. I'm sorry.
All right, so 2 or more bones that meet together, they meet at what they call a joint. Okay, Joint. Now, these bones are typically held together by tough but flexible bands of connective tissues called ligaments. Okay, so there are movable joints, which most joints are movable. But if they have permanently fused together, then they're called immovable joints. That doesn't make a lot of sense. They're either movable or immovable. You know, hey. But that's just the way they are. The skull actually has several immovable joints that are fused together, and they form like ridges. And typically they're fused together permanently. So the skeletal system functions, and the skeletal functions is to support and for movement. The skeletal system is also for protection. It's there to store minerals and for blood cell production. All right, so the protection is there to help support many things, but one important thing that it does support is our organs, which is our heart and our lungs and all those things. Your brain, your eyes. Imagine if you didn't have a skull around your brain. It would be not good. Let me just say that. Anyway, mineral storage. Our body needs calcium, which we typically get from milk, to form and become healthy and rigid. We also, of course, need calcium throughout the rest of our body. The blood cell production is like bone marrow inside the bones. Remember that red bone marrow makes red blood cells. And they do that to replace the old and worn out ones. And as you grow, they become yellow. All right, so we're going to move into the next section. I don't know that we'll get through all this section today, but we'll see. It's muscles. All right, we're talking about the muscular system. Now, the organ systems that an animal or human uses to move around are called your muscles. Okay? So the organ system that animals and human uses to move around are called your muscles. If you look here, we'll look at some of these muscles here today. You have a frontal view and a back view of an individual with showing, like you've heard, your deltoids and your pectorals, your biceps, your abdominals, your quadriceps, which are down here, your hamstring. Oh, I pulled a hamstring. It's a muscle in your leg. Gluteals is your buttocks, your bottom that you sit on. Triceps is your arm, and so on. Okay, you don't have to draw that diagram. It's just there for you to look at because you'll actually see some of those pictures as we go through in the book, okay? Now, if you look with me on page 278, we see the common skeletal muscles, all right? Some that I just told you about. Some muscles have names that indicate the shape, like the deltoid. Everybody look with me on page 278. Like the deltoid muscle is a triangular shape. They say, anyway. The trapezius is like a trapezoid shape. Oblique is like a slanting direction. Your biceps connect, are 2 connection points at one end, and then your triceps has 3 connections, tri and bi, those type of things. You see the runner here, and you see the indication of the various muscles, the obliques, the biceps, there in the arms, triceps, deltoid. And then over onto the other page, you have your major, which are your larger muscles, your minor, which are your smaller muscles, and your maximus, which is the largest muscle in the region of the body. Notice the picture at the top. The gluteus maximus is the largest muscle in that region. That is your hiney that you sit on. It's a muscle. Yes. Yes. So your body moves when your muscles become shorter or thicker, or they contract. You know, when you have like a leg pain, especially down here after you've done a lot of walking, all that, when your muscles are contracting, that really hurts. There are 3 main types of muscles: voluntary muscles, involuntary muscles, and cardiac muscles. We're going to briefly talk about those types of muscles. I'll come back, I thought. All right, so we're going to start with a voluntary muscle here in just a minute. All right, so you have a number of muscle tissues, guys, that cannot control. And these muscles are called involuntary muscles, okay? In other words, your nervous system automatically controls these. It sort of just happens without you even thinking about it. Anyway, so you have an involuntary muscle. Remember that. You might want to write that down, an involuntary muscle. involuntary. That muscle just automatically works without thinking about it. It just happens. It just knows what to do. That's an involuntary muscle. Okay? Let me just see. Yeah, okay. Okay, well, it started with voluntary, but let's just have a voluntary muscles. Yes.
I wasn't quite done.
Okay, voluntary muscle is a muscle that is controlled at will. It can be controlled. So when you think about an involuntary muscle, you think about the muscle in your heart. Sit up, please. The muscle in your heart, it just works. It automatically works without thinking. It just knows forward and what to do. Okay? So the voluntary muscles are usually attached to the bones by bands of connected tissues called tendons. Tendons. Oh, I pulled a tendon. You heard that before?
I haven't heard it either.
Okay, shh, 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 shh.
I ate too much food at lunch, I think.
All right. Then, Ezra, stop listening. You better be taking notes. A skeletal muscle shows a pattern of dark and light bands called striations, which are striated muscles. Now, and typically the striated muscles are your cardiac muscles. Okay? Well, I don't know why I didn't do that. All right. Muscles and energy. Muscles need a constant supply of energy. You know, if a muscle, if you just sit and you don't use a muscle, eventually that muscle is going to deteriorate. There is a process called cellular respiration, and that requires oxygen to make ATP. Okay? That involves cellular respiration. So, the cells then use the ATP to make the muscle cells contract. So, ATP is important. And to do that, it requires oxygen. So as the amount basically of the oxygen in your body, as it returns to normal and your breathing begins to slow back down, at the same time there's a process going on with the lactic acid being converted back to glucose, and then it's reused again. Okay? Now, if the muscles cannot get enough oxygen, they begin to use lactic acid fermentation. You don't need to write that down, but muscles and homeostasis. Anybody remember what homeostasis is?
What do you call it? The thing.
It's when your body maintains a constant stability. Okay? Muscles help the body maintain its constant temperature. Okay?
The total.
Yes.